Hello everyone, I'm Dalton Burdett.
I'm Ryan Warner.
And we are the Movie Nights. Well, some of them. If you're watching this, it's because you want to hear our uncensored and unfiltered thoughts and opinions about the world of movies. So kick back, grab a snack, and thank you for being a part of the conversation. We're back, Ryan, doing the whole thing with the new show, uploading the clips as they go by, which they've been doing pretty well. So thank you for checking out our Young Frankenstein classic movie review and our franchise spotlight of Back to the Future. We have that and a lot more planned for today's show. So, Ryan, how are you, bud? It's been a week.
Dude, I'm good. It's nice seeing the videos get some love and attention, because it feels like we've been working hard for a while, so it's nice to see a little bit of appreciation that way. So we do appreciate you guys, because this is a lot of fun. Love talking movies, love watching movies, love hearing about movies. So with that being said, Dalton, are you ready to jump into some news headlines that we may have?
Yes, I am. And this part of the show is when we break down movie and television news and just tell you what's going on in the world of entertainment. So, Ryan, this article I'm about to read comes to us from The Wrap.
The Wrap.
And that is, Netflix's Stranger Things is being sued for copyright infringement, which this is not a brand new thing that happens with them. It's happened before in the past. And also, I think it might even be the same guy who's doing it. The only reason I'm bringing up the story, though, is not because of the actual lawsuit. It's because of something much funnier that's going on, and that is what Netflix said in response to the lawsuit. This is literally the only reason why I'm bringing this up.
Is this a newer lawsuit that's happening?
Yes, it's a brand new lawsuit.
It feels like that they've been getting in trouble ever since they first aired.
Yeah, but it keeps getting, settled or proven not, what's going on. But this is what a representative for Netflix told The Wrap, in quotes. Mr. Kennedy has been puddling these far-fetched conspiracy theories for years, even though Netflix has reportedly explained to him that the Duffer Brothers had never heard of him or his stupid unpublished script until he began threatening to sue them. After we refused to give in to the demands for a payoff, he filed this baseless lawsuit. There is no shortage of people who would like to claim credit for creating Stranger Things, but the truth is the show is independently conceived by the Duffer Brothers and the result of their creativity and hard work. I did add the stupid adjective, but he did say, even though Netflix has repeatedly explained to him that the Duffer Brothers had never heard of him or his unpublished script.
Yeah.
So, savage words coming from the representative from Netflix.
I mean, it sounds like stupid was in there originally, but his PR person was like, you can't do that.
Yeah, no, it's just, if I was, working for Netflix and one of my biggest shows of all time was constantly being sued for, like, you stole my idea, of course I'd be a little fed up, and I would say something worse. I thought that was actually pretty tame for what's actually going on.
Oh, absolutely, and they have to be fed up. Like, think about it. Ever since Stranger Things ever got aired, like, this guy has been going after them, so of course you're going to get fed up, especially since it's been settled before and it's come back that, like, this is the Duffer Brothers' idea and this is their creation. So I could just imagine how annoyed Netflix is. Yeah,
no, it's got to be super duper annoying for them, and I just thought that was really funny, and that's why I wanted to bring that
a
up
hilarious comment
on today's show. But moving on to our next story, this one comes to us from Deadline, and I'm actually really, really excited about this. It is being reported that Netflix is making. Speaking of Netflix, is making its biggest budget movie so far. This film is called The Gray Man, and it stars Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans. And Joe and Anthony Russo of Infinity War and Endgame fame are going to be directing the film, and their production company of Agbo. I know they're producing it. I'm pretty sure they're directing it.
It seems like they're taking a step back from directing for a while.
Yes, no, it does say
they are directing. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they've been producing a lot of stuff lately. I guess just that Endgame money that they just want to throw to other people to make films.
Dude, listen, if I directed Avengers Infinity War and Endgame back to back, I would take 5 years.
And Civil War.
Yeah, and Civil War, I know. I would take 5 years off.
Just throw money at everyone. Hey, make this movie.
Yeah.
Do what you want.
Like, I'm going to go to the Bahamas and just do nothing.
Yeah.
Like, that's exactly what I would do. So I don't blame them at all, but I'm really excited about this news, not only because it's going to be their first film kind of stepping behind the camera since the Marvel films, but also Ryan Gosling is one of my favorite actors. I think he's one of the best actors working today. And not only that, but, you have Chris Evans, who's worked with the Russo brothers a number of times. And so I'm just really looking forward to this and just seeing their dynamic on screen. I know it's going to be like a spy espionage type of movie, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, what are your thoughts on, getting an actor like Ryan Gosling to hop on board and do a Netflix project like this?
I mean, I just echo everything you said. I love Ryan Gosling and pretty much everything he's in. I think he's very underrated. I mean, he gets a lot of love, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's in as many conversations as he should be. But it was Chris Evans, you said, and
Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling.
There's no information released on the plot, right? Just the title, director, and... Yeah. Okay.
Well, the only thing we know is like it's going to be like a mano-a-mano type movie of like Ryan Gosling versus Chris Evans, and like trying to go after the same thing is sort of what we know about it.
Okay. That'll be interesting to watch because I don't think we've seen them in a movie together, at least not to my knowledge off the top of my head. Yeah. And those are two fantastic actors, I think. And it would be nice to see what the Russo brothers have in store coming off of Marvel fame and having that Marvel money to do it pretty much whatever they want.
That'll get you some creative freedom if you make the biggest movie of all time.
Yes, absolutely. So, and that makes sense as to why Netflix is just going to give them whatever budget they want. Yeah. And the Russo brothers are going to put that budget to good use. Whether it's great CG, whether it's great locations, a bigger cast. I mean, you never know because naturally after making those huge movies, who knows who wants to work with them, maybe they're going to get some huge talent, just add to it and it's going to be a star-studded cast, but good for Netflix for, dumping them a bunch of money because they definitely picked up Irishman and no other studio wanted that. So they're willing to throw out money.
Yeah. They want talent. They want to keep showing that they mean the real deal. So they're going to keep doing it. I think that ice cream truck finally drove away. Yeah. Sorry if you guys could hear that. I just wanted to truck through it because I hate stopping the show for little dumb things like that. Yeah. But moving on to our next story. This one comes to us from Deadline. Mm-hmm. This is just something that I thought was rather interesting because for any of you who know us and know just, the things that we do, we're independent filmmakers. We haven't made a feature yet, but we make tons of short films. We were supposed to make a film back in April, but then it got pushed back because of COVID, and now we plan on shooting it in September. However, and we gave our exclusive details on that film in episode 15 of the Great Movie Radio Show, one of our great partners, so give that a listen, please.
Wow, great plug, dude. You're just on top of your game now.
I'm trying, dude. I'm trying.
Holy shit, dude. I'm impressed.
But anyway, just speaking of, shooting in this weird time, apparently Warner Brothers, because, production on the Batman and a couple other of their movies are starting to gear up back in production again. Yeah. Warner Brothers has set up an anonymous system for reporting coronavirus malpractice during shoots. So basically, obviously now in all the movie shoots, adjusting to the world that we're living in, there's going to be times where, you're shooting and you require masks, temperature checks. I don't know the specifics of what's going on, but obviously it's a lot of strict things to handle. And movie sets are very time sensitive. You have to work and you have to move on movie sets or else you're going to be wasting money. Yeah. And so I think that Warner Brothers anticipates some filmmakers trying to slide those new coronavirus rules and for the sake of time, but I'm glad that they've now set up a hotline to people saying, hey, if you see this happen on set, you can anonymously report it. We'll send someone out to investigate and make sure that everything's being done correctly. I think this is a great move on Warner Brothers' part. I wouldn't be surprised if more studios follow suit and follow through and do this as well. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this idea of having this anonymous reporting base for, not following the coronavirus cleaning details?
Oh, I think it's fantastic, because Warner Brothers is ultimately going to set up whatever rules they want. Like each day you get your temperature check, whether it's like every hour to make sure you're not showing any symptoms or running a fever. I think it's great that they are implementing this, and I hope that other studios echo this and do this as well, because ultimately you want your employees to be safe, and in this case you want actors, behind the scenes, crew, you want everyone to be safe. And not only doing temperature checks to show that you're being active in it, but also setting up the anonymous hotline, I think will ensure that everyone is being safe, because no one wants to be investigated for doing anything wrong. So just don't do anything wrong in the first place. And I think having this security blanket will definitely help the movie business take this COVID situation very seriously. That way they are abiding by the Warner Brothers rules if they are shooting for Warner Brothers, or if another studio echoes this and takes this, that way they can follow their practices and make sure that they're abiding by their rules. So I think it's a great system that they set up, and honestly, I'm totally for it.
I think so too, and I also think just announcing that the system exists will prevent preemptive people being like, maybe we can get away with it, and then they hear that they have this, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't even mess with it. So I think it's good to not only get out on top of what they potentially see happening, but also I like that they're taking an inward realistic look of like, we think people might try to take advantage of the situation.
And they're being very proactive with it, which is fantastic, because that's honestly the last thing you want to hear is like, oh, 13 people caught COVID on a Warner Brothers shoot, and then they put this in. It's like they're getting ahead of the game, which is fantastic in my eyes.
Yeah. And so I'm glad they're doing this. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if more studios you see this coming out and doing that. But I just thought that would be a cool thing to bring up because it's, something unheard of we've seen in the movie business before. Yeah. So I figured that would be it. And on our last story, before we move on to our next section of the show, Christopher Nolan's Tenet has unfortunately been indefinitely delayed. It's been taken off of the Warner Brothers release calendar. Delayed.
Boom.
I didn't want to have to fire you on camera. Tentatively delayed. I hate you. That was good. I'm sorry.
Win, lose, or draw. Always go for it.
Win, lose, or draw. Always go for it. No, but Tenet has been delayed indefinitely. It's taken off the release calendar, which breaks my heart in half, not only because I want my job back at the movie theater, but also just this means that new movies and theatrical releases isn't coming anytime soon. And the news just keeps getting worse and worse with that. So it really is just a heartbreaker. Luckily, I live in a city where an experimental movie theater has opened up and they're playing a bunch of classics. I've gotten to see tons of classic movies on the big screen. I just saw Raiders this past weekend, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And, it really hurts me because I cherish the theatrical movie-going experience more than I cherish probably personal people in my life. And it just, it breaks me. It really hurts me. And not just that, but it's a new Christopher Nolan movie, so I want to see it really bad.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that they're committed to the theatrical exposition for this film. They want people to come back to the movie theaters. They want their movie to do it. So I get that why they're putting it off, but, you want to keep people safe. But it just looks really bad for movie theaters right now. It looks really, really bad. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on not only Tenet being delayed, but as to what this could potentially mean for movie theaters in America going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks to see any movie get pushed back, especially if it's a movie you've been looking forward towards for a while. And both of us are huge Christopher Nolan fans, so like you, it breaks my heart as well. But it is for the safety of everyone, and unfortunately, with everything going on and things looking like it's only getting worse, who knows when theaters are going to open back up. But like you said, we're glad to see an experimental theater open up, and you've seen several movies there, and you said you felt safe there. Felt like that they've been doing everything that they can to make sure that everything's clean and sanitary and, enforcing rules when they need to. So I think that's a huge step in the right direction. But ultimately we still do have a long way to go. But we'll see when that happens because it just keeps getting pushed back and just worse and worse news keep happening, So it's very unfortunate in the world of movies, but in the bigger world, reality, it sucks seeing things get worse. And but hopefully we can pull through this and we can see theaters open back up and we can go watch a movie in theaters like we used to. God, it feels like forever ago that we watched a movie every weekend.
I know.
It sucks.
And I used to go to the movies 3 times a week, sometimes more. And it's just a part of my life is just missing.
Yeah.
And we know that obviously there's more bigger problems with COVID, people are dying, but just, in our bubble and our show and our little world, not being able to go to the movies has really been, tough. And, but hopefully this happens sooner rather than later. But I honestly wouldn't be shocked if 2021 is when movies come back. I wouldn't be shocked if that's eventually what we have to resort to. I don't want that, but at the same time, who knows what studios and theaters are planning right now.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see. But
all I know is the Oscars for the next few years are going to be really strange.
Bloodshot might get a Best Picture nomination.
You know who might win, though? Invisible Man.
Yeah.
Because so far, that's the best fucking movie of this year.
I agree. And you know who might get a Best Actor nomination? Ben Affleck for The Way Back.
Oh my God, yeah.
that would make me so happy.
But just think about it. Think about the ramifications of pushing back all these release dates, right? So far, theaters have only been open for January, February, not even March, right?
For March.
For March? All of March or most of March?
The first 3 weeks of March.
Okay. So, obviously, they said that they might change some rules to the Oscars for this next year if you planned on releasing it, but unfortunately...
And they extended the window to February of 2021. But I'm thinking at this point, would it be easier to just cancel 20 movies altogether, and then anything that came out in 2020 is just eligible for the 2022 Oscars? But
yeah, so looking at the bigger picture of movies, the Oscars are going to be super strange these next few years. I would say the next 5 years is the window we're looking at for just until things go back to normal in the world of movies and release dates and all that.
Yeah, no, it's going to be wacky. It's going to be wacky.
Yeah. It really will. It really will.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, we'll have to wait and see,
Yeah. Well, on that somber note.
Yeah, right?
We're going to go ahead and move on to the next version. Section, thank you. Yeah. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next section of our show, which is classic movie reviews. What is that? Well, what we do is Ryan and I like to watch a classic movie and give our thoughts and opinions on it in the modern age, the modern year. Mm-hmm. And what is a classic to us? That is a movie that is in high critical standing, has a following of fans, and came out at least 25 years ago. So Ryan, what movie are we going to be reviewing today?
Blues Brothers.
We are reviewing the 80s classic Blues Brothers, directed by John Landis, starring Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, who was taken from us way too soon. Mm-hmm. But I thoroughly love this movie. I wish our friend Adam was here. Yeah. That dude's a huge Blues Brothers fan.
He could talk about it for hours.
Hours, yes. And I'm really glad that we chose to do this one because it's just, not only is it just a funny, hilarious classic, but it was one of the first successful Saturday Night Live original movies. Because the Blues Brothers just started off on SNL with the amazing appearance by Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi. If you've never seen the original Blues Brothers SNL appearance by them, you have to watch it. It's amazing. But going right into this movie right away, right from the opening and the beginning scenes when John Belushi's character is getting out of jail and Dan Aykroyd goes to pick him up, it just sets up the type of characters they are with the editing and in-jokes, the jazz and blues music that it has in the opening scenes. I love the opening credits, like the dun-dun, it has their names. It's so good. And it sets up immediately the relationship that the two brothers have. And it immediately goes into my favorite scene in the movie, which is right in the beginning, and it's when they are at, when they visit the Penguin's office.
Yeah.
And there's a great scene where they go in, and obviously they're cussing and sinning, and this nun, who they call Penguin, is just beating the hell out of them with rulers, and they keep swearing, and she keeps hitting them. Mm-hmm. And, while they're doing that, she informs them that they need, I believe it doesn't seem like that much now, but I want to say it's like $3,000 or maybe $10,000. It's like this,
something like
this small amount that they need, or else, their orphanage that they grew up in is going to go under. Mm-hmm. And they kind of don't want to help at first because they obviously were troublemakers growing up, but you can tell that they really care about what they live, and they care about Penguin, even though that was still like their mother figure. So there may be hard feelings there, and they may have gone off on their own path, but you can tell that there's still loving feelings there. And this movie came out in like 1980, and I'm pretty sure this was the first use of it. But at one point when Penguin is hitting them, one of them looks at the other and says, "Man, fuck this noise." And I just never knew that they said that in that movie. So when I rewatched it, I laughed very hard out loud. And but I love that little sequence. And then you get to the scene where they go to the church, and James Brown is the pastor.
A lot of famous musicians in this movie.
Tons of cameos in this movie. Aretha Franklin's in it too. So good. But then you see the famous God light come down and it go over John Belushi, and he does the dance, and he's like, "We're on a mission from God." And that whole running joke throughout the movie is so
There are so many great. Good, solid running jokes throughout the movie.
Oh, yeah. And just there's great musical dances and bits too, great songs that are included. The second to third act break sequence when they're at the place performing, and the guy comes out and does the hidey, and the whole audience is participating. It's such a fun and such a great wacky movie. Yeah. And I love just how blunt and silly the Blues Brothers are. I love the scene when Elwood takes the can of glue and sprays it to the thing, and then looks at Joliet Jake and goes, "Glue. Strong stuff." Just keeps running away with him, and he just loves white bread toast. That's just his favorite thing to eat. Such a fun and such a great movie. Before we dive into more specifics, just give me some of your overall thoughts on the movie and just kind of what it means to you when you watch it.
Yeah, no, it's a hilarious movie. I absolutely love this movie, and one of my favorite running jokes is the plot of the movie. They're on a mission from God. My favorite sequence in the movie is whenever they are getting chased by cops, and they end up going into the mall, and they're just driving around the mall, and I believe John Elway, the quarterback,
Elwood Blues
is he says something along the lines of, they're never going to catch us. We're on a mission from God.
Yes.
It's just like, of course they're not going to catch you because God told you to go save the orphanage.
Yeah, just
and it's
in
like,
their eyes, they're just like, well, we're never going to get caught.
Yeah. And they don't.
Yeah, no, but like I love, not until like literally the very, very, very end when there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And the little Steven Spielberg cameo, which is hilarious.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But I love that mall sequence too, just because they're driving around the mall and Jake's like pointing out stores that are new. They're like, oh, they have this now, and they're just like driving past people. I love that. Also, Carrie Fisher in this film, God, not only is she just like a great actress and she'll always be Princess Leia, but upon rewatch, I almost completely forgot she's even in the film. Mm-hmm. And not only is she just stunningly gorgeous and beautiful, but just her rocket launcher scenes just trying to kill Jake Blues. And
they blow down the building and they wake up and they're like, oh, 9 o'clock, late for work. It's like, your building just collapsed on you.
It's so funny, dude. And just, I love when they're in the phone booth and it blows straight up into the air and then falls down and they just look at each other like, and they get up and they never lose the hat and sunglasses. God,
never.
So
that's part of who they are, the hat and
good.
sunglasses.
And you have the classic line of like, we got a full tank of gas, half pack of cigarettes. That whole speech is great.
Yeah.
But not only do I, really, really like just the comedy and the action. There's some great stunt and car chase scenes in this film, especially towards the end. The car chases are insane.
I remember watching it for the first time with you, probably within the last year and a half. I want to say I watched it for the first time. Mm-hmm. And the car chase scene, whenever they go up the ramp and it's like a toy car in slow motion, it's flipping. Yeah. I lost my mind when I will watch that. I thought that was the funniest thing.
It's great. It's great stuff. And the Illinois Nazis. I love that bit.
Yeah.
Who's holding up the bridge? The fucking Nazi party. I hate the Nazis. And they just drive and they all jump off. And then I love the bit when Jake tells people his address is the Cub Stadium, Wrigley Field. Mm-hmm. When the Nazis find his address, they go and they just meet at Wrigley Field. They're like, those bastards. And then they like the cops, the Nazis, like all these people are after
everyone's chasing them.
The movie. Oh, and I love Jake's character, like when they go to the country club and he walks up and they pretend to be the band, and then the actual band shows up, so he goes and like is the middleman so they can escape. It's so funny. Oh, and the bit where they're in the restaurant, like the really, really fancy restaurant that their old band member works at.
Oh yeah, and they're trying to like get the band back together.
And they're just like chopping, destroying food, just like embarrassing.
And they're like eating off other people's plates and stuff.
And then John Belushi's like, "Excuse me, how much?" What? The little girl. How much for the little girl? And is just trying to scare the guy and get him to finally succumb and join.
Yeah.
Such a great film. But also it really, for that era, it kind of helped shine a light into, the African-American culture. And, you got a lot of the Blues Brothers. Yeah, they're two white dudes, and it's the 80s, so of course that's how it's going to be. But you get a lot of the African-American music culture, you get that scene, you get all of the crowds and the culture. It was a very, very diverse movie, and I thought it was really cool. Oh, Ray Charles,
Aretha Franklin.
And just all the extras, the dancers. Yeah. It was just such a celebration of American culture, especially in that time period. And, there hasn't really been a fun R-rated movie like that. Because that movie plays as a family film when you watch it. Mm-hmm. But it's very R-rated. There's F-words. There's some violence. The violence isn't that bad. But, I miss that. I miss the R-rated family film. And I wish we could get more of those. But, I thoroughly love Blues Brothers. And I love that the journey those characters go on, and of course you bookend the movie with them getting arrested and performing Jailhouse Rock in the prison. It's perfect, and it's such a funny movie, and just I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I'm being genuine in how much I love this film.
Absolutely,
and just how well constructed the scenes are. John Landis is a phenomenal director, and so not only are the comedic scenes funny, but like we said, the car chases, the big action scenes, just everything, and just the amazing performances from John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd.
Absolutely. And
so good. Iconic
absolutely.
characters.
Absolutely. Something that's still around today. Like they still have Blues Brothers shows at Universal.
And crowds always gather to watch them.
Yeah, absolutely. They not only have like comedic lines and moments, but like they have comedic editing as well. Like the end performance, whenever it's them and then it cuts to like some Broadway like style where everyone's like wearing tuxes
and the dude's outfit changes.
Like just out of nowhere, just whenever it cuts, and then it cuts back to them and they're wearing their normal garb, and it's like That's funny. It's funny use of editing, and I'm glad that they, because it seems like they don't take themselves seriously, which adds another layer of fun to it. And it does have a lot of heart, like you said, about like celebrating American culture and how diverse America is,
and bringing like it's about saving an orphanage, you know, and just like that base line of just, you know, sometimes you have to get yourself in trouble to help somebody else. And it really shows like the Blues Brothers, while they started off in SNL, in this film they're really complex characters, and that they love, you know, getting in trouble and shenanigans, but at the core of their hearts they just want to help, especially Chicago. And it was just such a fun thing to see. And they don't really make movies like Blues Brothers anymore, and I wish they did. I wish they did. But what are you going to give your overall rating and grade to for the Blues Brothers?
Oh, 5 stars out of 5.
5 stars.
Easy. Yeah, I do not honestly see a negative about this film. I think this film is perfect. The word I don't really like to use when describing film, but this is easily one of those films that you could say is one of the 100 films in my top 10.
Oh, yeah.
Is a famous line we always say.
Yes.
And this is
a great film.
Easily one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and if they ever were to put this in theaters again, I would go see it immediately.
Absolutely. But what about you? What are your what's your grade for it?
I would give it an A.
Okay.
The only thing preventing it from being an A+ is there are some... The script overall is really funny, and where they're going, like you have to buy into the world a little bit, but there are some places in the movie that I feel like the improvisational aspect of the movie hit a corner.
Okay.
And they had to like do something to just kind of get around and get out of it, and that is a little bit noticeable. But that's it. But it bothered me enough to where sometimes in the movie I'd be like, okay, let's go to the next thing.
Right.
Probably could have been just trimmed down a little bit more. But from what I understand, they trimmed a lot because apparently the script was like huge when they wrote it. I think Dan Aykroyd and John Landis wrote it. And but I love this film, and I'm really glad that we got to watch it again. It was so
it's honestly a great film.
It's always a good time, always.
And it is one of the few films that truly has heart and cares about it.
And it's R-rated. I miss that.
I
miss that. You can make an R-rated movie and still have it be heartfelt and amazing.
And I feel like a lot of movies that we've seen lately, like whether it's new or older movies, it just doesn't feel like they have that same kind of heart.
Yeah.
Like the last movie that felt like it had heart of the classic movies would be Clerks.
Yeah, and even then that like filthy, raunchy movie, it did have heart in it. And Clerks 2 even has more heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely, like, that's a huge, huge positive when watching a movie, because you can tell the filmmakers really care about the story they're telling.
Oh, yeah, and they just care about the characters so much.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so that'll be our little classic movie review for the Blues Brothers. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the next section of our show called Movie Hot Takes, where Ryan and I pick a hot take about a discussion in the movie world, one that's probably unpopular, and kind of defend our point as to why we have that hot take in the world of movies. So, also, use this opportunity to leave your own hot takes in the comments below. So, Ryan, what is your movie hot take that you have for us this week?
Well, funny enough that we just wrapped up classic movies, because mine has to do with classic movies.
Interesting.
So typically whenever someone talks about classic movies, you like to think this movie is generally good, right? Especially when people talk about like, oh, like this is such a classic, it's such a good movie. Like when you talk about Lawrence of Arabia, which I haven't seen, but that's typically regarded as a good movie. Citizen Kane, another movie I haven't seen, but that's regarded as like the greatest film of all time.
I'm adding these to our classic movies list so you can get to watching those. God, Citizen Kane's great.
Honestly, that is where this discussion centers around. I've heard Citizen Kane is very boring and not good. But what my point is specifically in the movie I want to talk about is Forrest Gump. That is regarded as like a fantastic movie. Everyone I know absolutely loves that movie. I think that movie is good. I don't think it's fantastic. I don't think we should love it because the mainstream, if you will, tells us that this is a movie we need to love. I think it's boring for most of it, but I think it's a good movie. I think it has heart. I think it has the good message, but I don't think it's fantastic. I don't think it's like this outstanding, groundbreaking movie that everyone likes to think it is. But that's the beauty of subjectivity and the beauty of film. Which we
just talked about last week.
Exactly. So that is one example. Another example, which I'm going to catch a lot of heat for from Kyler, is Good Will Hunting. Everyone that I know, everyone's mother that I know, Everyone's grandmother that I know absolutely loves this movie. This movie is fantastic to them. I didn't even finish it. I got like 30 minutes into it and fell asleep, and I wasn't even that tired. I was watching it around 5, 6 o'clock, and I just fell asleep after watching it. It's just boring, just because the classic movies and movies that people think are top of the class, top of like above all these other films, doesn't necessarily make them good. And that ties directly into the subjectivity of film. And I don't think that people should go into movies with a mindset of like, oh, everyone thinks this movie's great, so I'm going to think this is great. And that's not the case. It may not, you may not sit well with it, just like I haven't sit well with Forrest Gump. I just think it's a good movie. I think it's long. I think it's boring, but it's good. And Good Will Hunting, I think it's just boring. I fell asleep. It didn't really capture me the way I was looking for, because I went in with the mindset of everyone loves this movie, so I'm going to love it. And that's my hot take. Do you have any thoughts and opinions about that?
So basically your hot take is just because a movie is well beloved and a classic, and people will tell you, oh, you got to watch this movie, you'll love it, doesn't mean that it's necessarily good. Always.
Correct.
Okay. Few things.
Yep.
One, I love Forrest Gump. I just want that to be clearly stated. I love that film. Good Will Hunting, technically on movie night standard, isn't a classic because it came out in 1997.
Okay.
But I'll still say, how dare you? Good Will Hunting is one of the best movies ever made, but we'll debate about that some other time.
And again, I haven't watched the whole movie all the way through, so if I watch all the way through, that could totally change.
And like we said last week, all film is subjective, so I'm not saying he's right or wrong, I'm just saying I disagree. Mm-hmm. However, on the general concept of just because a movie is considered a classic and it is in high regard doesn't mean you have to like it. Mm-hmm. I agree. There are classic movies that I dislike. The one off the top of my head that I'm thinking about is a movie called Stagecoach. Okay. It's an early John Wayne movie. I thought that movie was very boring. I didn't like any of the characters. There are some really top-of-the-line stunts in it, especially for like early cinema like that. I think it was the 30s it came out. Mm-hmm. And there's some stuff in there, especially towards the end with the stunts, where I was like, holy crap, that's impressive. But the movie was very bland and nothing above the surface level to me. But many, many people regard that movie as a classic film. It just didn't really work for me.
Yeah.
So I completely understand what you mean by that. But I also think that just goes to the testament, bringing back last week about subjectivity. Mm-hmm. It brings about just how magic movies can be, because a collective group of generations of people have said, yo, this movie is a classic, bam, you will like it too. And just because you might not like it, still, just the fact that subjective art can have that power over audiences is interesting. But I agree that just because something's considered classic or great or in high regard doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to personally enjoy it or that you have to enjoy it.
Exactly. And the most famous one is Citizen Kane, because when you talk about film, I mean, yes, they did a lot of technical things that have never been done before, and that's the first of its kind, which I can understand and I can appreciate that, but it doesn't mean it's a great movie, and it doesn't mean I have to like it.
Exactly. Now, I also love Citizen Kane. I want that to be pointed out as well. But I know exactly what you're saying. And it happens all the time. Sometimes movies that have come out that aren't classics but will be considered classics, I know people who don't like those movies.
Yeah.
So, interesting point that you bring up, because I remember when you really start to get into becoming a film fan and movie watching and you don't like a movie that someone told you is a classic, you kind of don't admit it. You're just like,
no, I liked this about it.
Yeah.
And I liked that about it. Like, but you won't be like, no, I don't like it. And that's totally fine if you don't like a film.
Yeah. And there's a common classic that I know a lot of people don't like, and that's Blade Runner. For example, Hannah didn't like Blade Runner very much. I love it, but that is one of those classic movies that some people are just like, I don't understand the hype for it, and you'll see that happen sometimes. But nice point to bring up. Nice topic there. I like that.
Yeah. What about you? What's your hot take that you wanted to bring to the table today?
Speaking of things that we disagree on, here's my hot take.
Okay.
Now, granted, this is my subjective opinion, like we point out consistently. In my opinion, there is no such thing as a good Friday the 13th movie. I think the ones that I've seen, I haven't seen all of them. The ones that I've seen are trash. And the reasons why I don't watch the other ones is because the people who have seen them, who I know, like in the film fan world, have told me they're trash. Don't watch them. So, in my opinion, and I've seen Friday the 13th Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Jason X, Jason Goes to Hell, and...
Takes Manhattan.
I haven't seen Takes Manhattan.
Oh, that's Nick who's seen that.
I've seen 5. I've skipped 4.
Was it Freddy vs. Jason?
No, I have also seen that.
Okay.
But that's not it. Yeah, I've seen 1, 2, 3, 5. Is 5 Jason Goes to Hell? Maybe I'm thinking of the same one.
Maybe.
Yeah, but I haven't seen all of them. There's 2 or 3 that I haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
But I dislike all of them. And immediately when I say that, the first thing people go is like, well, what about the first one? What about the first Friday the 13th movie? You don't like the first Friday the 13th movie? What about the first one? And I'm like, the first one is also shit. I can't stand it. Because it is a Halloween ripoff. I love the original Halloween. So do you.
Absolutely.
Friday the 13th was made in response to Halloween's success, and the director of the film has even said that on multiple occasions. He's like, I was in the studio, they literally gave me a day, like Friday the 13th, like a holiday, and said, Halloween's popular, do it. Now, I like the twist. It's a very good twist. They probably should have included that character in the movie more, instead of just being kind of sudden.
Yeah.
But it was that concept was interesting.
The concept of the mother killing them instead of the child.
I was trying to tread lightly, but yeah, that.
Spoilers.
It came out in 1980.
But I'm pretty sure everyone, even if you haven't seen it,
common
they
knowledge.
know.
Yeah, it's common knowledge. Anyway, I like the makeup effects.
Mm-hmm.
Good job.
2 things.
and a famous makeup artist did them. His name is leaving me. I think it's Tom Savini, something like that. His name's leaving me.
Yeah, Tom Savini.
Yeah, but very, very famous makeup artist, and the makeup effects are very good. I dislike everything else. There are entire sequences where I'm just like watching it, like rubbing my temples, like just like, oh my god, what are they doing? Mm-hmm. And it's such a bad movie. 2 is worse, 3 is worse. But now, I do want to point out, I am not taking away or denying the existence of Jason being a prominent horror icon.
Mm-hmm.
That's objective. Just look at merchandise sales.
Yeah.
Immediately, Jason is an icon in horror. Everyone recognizes the hockey mask, which ironically didn't even come in until part 3.
Yeah.
But I am not denying or taking anything away from that. I just think every movie that I've seen that character in is absolute garbage. And what are your thoughts on my statement of not liking any of the Friday the 13th films? And tell me I'm wrong.
as much as I would love to tell you you're wrong, it is subjective. It's not going to sit well with you, and obviously it doesn't. But I personally like those movies. I know they're bad. I do think the first one is the best one, but like not being that guy, like what about the first one?
Yeah.
Like you don't like it, you don't like it. I'm not going to like force it down your throat. I'm not going to force you to like it. But I do think the first one is more enjoyable than the other ones. I do acknowledge that they're all trash, especially the newest one with Jared Padalecki. Like that one, horrible. It's horrible. But I watch it because it's a guilty pleasure. Like it's mindless. You turn your brain off. You watch someone kill other people, and it's a slasher film. And I love slasher films.
There are some that are really funny. Jason X was hilarious.
Never seen it, but I watched a clip and I refuse to watch it because it looks like absolute dog shit. Looks terrible. God. I watched a clip from it when they're all like in this straight tunnel, and then some like rock music plays, and they're like running around on the tube, and Jason like knocks their head off or something. I'm just like,
good stuff.
Oh God, I don't care to watch that.
Good stuff.
But it gave us Kevin Bacon. So I don't know how that's not a plus.
Ryan, looking for the silver lining since 1997.
Am I wrong?
No, not. But yeah, no. I like this segment of the hot takes and movies. But yeah, I want the world to know that there's no such thing as a good Friday the 13th movie, in my opinion. And if you want to debate about that anytime, you know where to find my social media.
Yeah, right.
I have nothing but time. Bring it on.
Oh boy.
Oh, good stuff.
But speaking of Raiders, franchise spotlight.
What?
You're talking about how you watched Raiders in the theater earlier.
That was like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, speaking of Raiders. Man,
We're now
I'm great
moving
at
on to the
segues.
section of the show called Franchise Spotlight, where we break down a movie franchise in detail and talk about each film. And this week's Franchise Spotlight is on the Indiana Jones franchise, starting with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yes. Good job, Ryan.
The segue was half there.
Yes. So I actually got the opportunity to see Raiders of the Lost Ark in a movie theater recently, like I said earlier. Mm-hmm. And, God, what a perfect movie. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I've been saying that a lot the past few weeks, but we keep picking bangers for these situations.
Bangers. Absolute bangers of movies.
Yes. And Raiders of the Lost Ark is just one of those movies, man, where it's pure cinematic magic every time. Like from the opening scene to, you don't even see his face. You just see his whip, his hat. He looks like a suave badass. And then he whips the guy's gun out of his hands and steps into the light, and it's sexy Harrison Ford. You're just like, dang, he's such a cool archaeologist. Like, what the hell? And then the moment things start going wrong, he becomes a regular dude. And he's just like flailing around, doesn't know what to do. And that's one thing that's really a testament to the whole franchise, but especially in Raiders, is when he's in his element, he's like this cool, unstoppable badass. But the moment he steps out of his comfort zone, he's like, yeah.
And anything bad happens, he's just like, oh, like freaks out,
Yeah, it's so funny. And
we get a young Doc Ock in it.
Yes, in the opening, yes. Alfred Molina. Mm-hmm. Very, very young Doc Ock. And, God, I love that whole opening. The iconic, like when he's looking at the idol and he has the sandbag. Like, it's such
very
fun stuff.
Iconic
and it's
moment.
all visual storytelling, too. Like, there's barely any lines in the first 15 minutes of that movie. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, as soon as he does all the hard work, it gets taken from him by his colleague and he has to go back to America. And then you get the great scene where the people come in and say, hey, the Nazis are trying to steal the Ark of the Covenant. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. And
then doesn't he, I believe he denies its existence, doesn't he? Like, he's like, it's not a real thing.
Well, no, like he believes it's a real thing, but he doesn't believe that it has power. He's just
That's what it was.
He's just like, I don't believe in any of that stuff, but it's a real artifact. And, my mentor, Abner Ravenwood, he would know where it is. I'm going to go, try to track him down. Mm-hmm. And then, you find out that, and I like how it never explicitly tells you in that opening, in that scene of like, he just says we had a falling out. But, and then you meet Marion and you find out that they had a thing. And then it's implied like, oh, their falling out was he was probably banging his daughter and then took off and then they hated each other. But I love, God, Marion Ravenwood, what an awesome character. Like, it's introduced and she's doing the drinking contest and she's pretending she's out of it just so she can win all this money. And then, and you get that shot when Indiana Jones walks in and his shadow's on the wall and you just see the hat and he walks in.
Badass.
And she turns around, Indiana Jones, and just punches him in the face. I love the sound effects.
The cheesy, just old classic sound effects.
So awesome. It's something that this movie, that I guess people just forgot about. This movie is violent as hell.
Yeah, it really is.
And like, dude, like the end, the dude's face just like melts and like people's heads explode. It's so great. Yeah. But I wish Indiana Jones stayed violent. Like, we'll get to Temple of Doom. But I wish that they
So what's your favorite
violent.
segment from this movie? Like, what's your favorite sequence or moment from this movie?
A couple things. I really quick want to point out the cinematography in this film is unbelievable. And like I was going to say, I love the shot when they're digging and it's just the silhouette shot of the sunset and them digging. But my favorite sequence is when they're Marion and Indiana Jones are escaping and they run into that plane and that big dude is going to go up against Indiana Jones. And like Indiana Jones is just trying to sneak into the cockpit and the dude sees him and Indiana's like, and he comes down and they start having this fight and Indiana Jones is getting his ass handed to him, but then he finally gets the upper hand. The dude's nose starts bleeding. You're like, yeah, and then he gets knocked on his ass and then just smiles and you see the plane propeller just coming at the dude and it just messes him up.
Oh, absolutely.
Such a great sequence. And just this film is, Spielberg directed the shit out of this movie. This movie is so well done. And it's like, it was a story by George Lucas. It's a Lucasfilm Productions. Like,
which is a very fascinating story on how they wrote it.
Yeah. And really cool stuff there. And like there's even a location that's the same location from A New Hope.
Really?
With when R2-D2 gets captured by the Jawas, the scene where like Indiana Jones has the rocket launcher, he's like, I'm gonna blow up the Ark. Like, it's the same location.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, really cool stuff. And I also love just the dynamic between Indiana Jones and Marion. There's this great scene where they're on a boat, almost trying to get away. And it's like the first like intimate moment that they have. And you get the great line when she goes, you're getting too old to be doing this. And he says, it's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. And they're sitting there and he's like complaining that his whole body hurts. And she's trying to help him. And she's like, well, God damn it, where doesn't it hurt? And he goes, right here. And he like is like being like a dick. And he points to his elbow. He's like, right here. And then she kisses his elbow. And he's like, this isn't so bad either. And she just starts kissing him wherever he points. It's a cute little moment between them. But it really made me mad that like they didn't bring her back for like 2 and 3 because I love the Marion Ravenwood character. But they were trying to make Indiana Jones like the American James Bond, which we'll get into later.
Yeah.
But then you get the awesome sequence in the end when they open the Ark and he's just like, close your eyes. And then everyone...
Well, he screams. He doesn't say just close your eyes.
Close your eyes.
Bloody murder. He's yelling
and like people's heads are exploding. People are melting. The practical effects are insanely awesome.
Oh, yeah.
God, Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the best fucking movies ever made. Oh, and real quick, the stunts in Raiders. Oh my God. The action choreography and scenes and the stunt work. Top tier stuff. Like the stunt when Indiana Jones on the front of the car and he's getting sucked under.
Oh,
so
yeah.
He just goes and like it's a real stunt man like underneath a car that lets go and then grabs and like gets dragged by a real vehicle. And it's like, Jesus Christ, we would never see this now.
It's nuts.
It's so awesome. The fight scenes are great.
I would definitely say like my favorite sequence would be whenever they're in the market and the guy comes up with a sword, like the iconic.
Yes.
And the real story behind that like made that scene what it is. But this guy's like looking for a fight and Indy's just like pulls out his gun and just shoots him. Which like after watching the opening and like seeing how he's just like so over it anytime he gets like screwed over or just something bad happens, he's just over it and wants to get out of it. And that's what happens. Something bad happens and he just wants to get out of the situation, so he just shoots him, you know, as in typical Indy fashion. And I'm glad that Indiana Jones like has that moment because that moment is a staple on who he is.
Yeah. And it's funny because it wasn't even scripted. Harrison Ford just had really bad food poisoning. They were supposed to have a fight, and he had really bad food poisoning that day, and he was just like, can I just shoot him? And Spielberg is like, well, yeah, that's a great idea. And they ended up doing it, and that's... I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's such a good movie. Seeing it on the big screen was so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But moving on to the next one, we have Temple of Doom.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I'm going to say something kind of unpopular about Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Go ahead. We love unpopular opinions here.
This movie is fucking awesome. I love Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Yeah. It's not as good as Raiders, and there are some things in the movie that I wish were not there. Kate Capshaw's entire character. Oh my God, she's so annoying. I hate her in this movie.
She just screams at everything.
She's awful. She's the worst. But I love that the approach to this movie was, we're going to make a movie that's just completely different from Raiders of the Lost Ark and just have it involve Indiana Jones and do it that way. And while the first Indiana Jones movie was much about like, you know, Judaism and that sort of religion, this one's about Hinduism. And this movie's dark as hell. It scarred every child that ever lived who saw this movie. And when you watched Raiders and Indiana Jones as a kid, you felt like you were getting away with something because those movies are really violent and parents are just kind of like, whatever.
It's a fun adventure movie. But
Temple of Doom, quick backstory before we get into the actual movie. This movie is partially the reason why the PG-13 movie rating exists. Because at the time, you just had G, PG, and R. And then Temple of Doom came out, which is rated PG. And a lot of parents were mad because, you know, a man just casually rips another man's heart out with his hand.
Yeah, as you do.
Like it's nothing. And it's traumatic and horrifying. And there's a bunch of other cool bloody scenes. And parents were arguably, or admittedly, a little upset about what happened. So they decided, well, let's create a new rating and fix that problem. And one of the first movies to come out with that rating was actually Red Dawn. But yeah, and even Spielberg's career after this, he started only using graphic violence for like serious things like Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List, things of that nature. Because even Indiana Jones 3 isn't as violent, and they may have done another one that wasn't that violent, but I try not to acknowledge the existence of that one.
Yeah, but unfortunately, you're gonna have to with Indy 5 coming out.
But getting into the specifics of the Temple of Doom, the opening scene, there's a great James Bond homage. Indiana Jones is wearing Sean Connery's tux with the little red flower, and it looks perfect. And opens with a musical number, and this, you know, you're in Asia, and he's just sitting there. And he kidnaps Kate Capshaw because he accidentally drank poison and they have the antidote. And you get this amazing sequence of him trying to escape. Then Short Round comes in. I love Short Round so much. No time for love, Dr. Jones.
No time for love.
I love him. And the club that they're in is actually called Club Obi-Wan.
Oh, really?
Which is
I didn't clock that.
A funny little thing, yeah. And Dan Aykroyd plays the guy who gets him out. Randomly. He's in the movie for like 30 seconds.
Good for him.
Yeah, right? But then you get the one scene that I think is a bit too much, where they're in the plane and the turns out the pilot and the co-pilot are working for the people he was trying to escape. So they jump off of the plane with parachutes. So they get into an inflatable boat and jump out and pull the boat, and they just fall and land, and they're fine.
Yeah.
A little bit of suspension of disbelief not working there, but, whatever. But then you get into the real meat of this film, and you get to where they get to this temple in India, or this little village, this really poor village, and a lot of these people are very poor, and clearly it's this really sad, something horrible's happened. And they take Indiana Jones and Kate Capshaw in Short Round, they feed them, and they start talking about, what's going on. And Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, talking to the main leader of the village, is told like, oh, they took this sacred stone that we love so much, and in our religion, it brings love and peace to our people. And ever since it's been taken, bad things have happened, and they stole all of our children, which you find out were used for slave labor. Like I said, this movie's dark.
Yeah,
this movie's dark as hell. But they kidnapped all of our children. They're using them as slaves, and they took this stone. So what I like about this movie is, while in the previous movie and the other ones, the mission is kind of brought to Indiana Jones, like, hey, let's go do this because you would like this. Where this one, it's just this village guy saying, we'll make sure you can get out of our country if you please just help us. So yeah, part of him is doing it because he wants to get home, but part of it also, as the movie plays out, you're seeing that he just really wants to help. So it was kind of, not only does it can dig his archaeological bone of like, I get to find an artifact, but he just really wants to make sure these people are okay.
Yeah.
And so it was a real like deep character thing for Indiana Jones. And you have Kate Capshaw, who just won't shut the fuck up. But
screams at everything.
Yep. And then, you get some great stuff with him in Short Round up until this moment. And then you actually go to the India. And in one of my notes, what did I put in one of my notes for one of the negatives of Temple of Doom? It was just a little bullet point that says mild racism. And it's when they're eating at the table and everyone's kind of making fun of what the Indian people are eating. And it's like, this didn't age very well. But, it does help establish like that they're in like a land that they're not familiar with. And you get this great sequence when Kate Capshaw and Harrison Ford are clearly about to have sex, but they go to the opposite room and they're betting which one's going to break first and come in. But then Indiana Jones gets attacked and he starts fighting this guy, and Kate Capshaw's like, wow, he's really not coming. What, like an asshole. And then he like throws the whip around the guy's neck and hangs him from the ceiling, and then goes in, is like breathing heavy and like looking around. She's like, oh, be gentle. And he's just like looking for people. And that's when you get to the scene where they find this underground like voodoo temple, and this dude's ripping dudes' hearts out. I'm talking directly to Kyler and Nick right now.
Okay.
For you guys who always try to make me mad about John Williams just does the same music over and over, the score for Temple of Doom is dark and depressing and has no trumpets, and it is horrifying, especially in that temple sequence when he's ripping the dude's heart out.
Yeah.
John Williams did that, and it sounds completely different and great. Fuck you guys.
Star Wars and Superman's the same.
Stop that. We're going to argue about that some other time. But, in Temple of Doom, they go and try to stop what's going on. They see the stone that they're supposed to grab. And so Indiana Jones goes in there, gets kidnapped, gets forced to drink blood, becomes evil Indiana Jones once he drinks the blood.
Super cheesy.
Short Round gets put into a slave camp and gets whipped by people. And there's this really heartbreaking scene when evil Indiana Jones is about to kill Kate Capshaw, like as he's under like the Hindu spell. And Short Round runs up to Indiana Jones and is like, Indy, please don't. I love you. Don't do this. And he like hits Short Round.
Yeah, it's very sad.
It's very sad. Dude, it's dark as hell. And then Short Round grabs a torch, runs up to Indiana Jones and burns him in the stomach. And then he snaps out of it. And then they're about to kill Short Round. Then he goes, wait, he's mine. And then goes, grabs him, hangs him over the fire and goes. And then guess what happens right there? The Raiders starts playing, and they turn around and just start beating the shit out of everyone.
As typical indie fashion.
Awesome. And I like this movie so different from Raiders. It's dark as hell. It explored a new type of religion. And it's actually a prequel. It takes place a year before Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was interesting. They really try to make Indiana Jones be James Bond in this movie, it worked for the most part, but they kind of abandoned that concept. But anyway, as the movie wraps up, you get the great boxcar sequence where it's like they're on a roller coaster and they're fighting each other, and it's great. And you get one of my favorite sequences in the movie when he's on the rope bridge and he just cuts it in half and they fall and he has to fight people, and people are getting eaten by alligators at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
The violence is crazy. Awesome. But
definitely a much darker, different approach to Indiana Jones, which, changed kind of the future, at least for the next movie, on the direction they wanted to take.
Mm-hmm. And the movie being a prequel is both a positive and a negative for me. And the reason I say that is because in the positive part, it kind of does help character development of Indiana Jones, because while he's mostly the same guy that he is in Raiders, he is slightly different. And the way this movie draws out is you can tell that by the end of Temple of Doom, he is the person that he was in Raiders. Mm-hmm. So that journey was interesting to see how he was a slightly different person just a year before and kind of became the Indiana Jones that we know. He's not completely different, but just like subtle little things to help him become who he was. Mm-hmm. And also, where it's a bad thing is there are several scenes they want you to think Indiana Jones is going to die, but it's like, I've seen Raiders. He was there the whole time. Yeah. So it's like, it's wasted suspense because it's not suspenseful. And the thing that sucks is, like, if it's a true sequel and takes place after Raiders, there's a great sequence where after you see the dude rip a guy's heart out, he's fighting Indy at the end and then he puts his fingers over his heart. And so if you didn't know that, like, it was a prequel, you'd be like, like, for a second, like, oh God. Yeah. But like, if you know that, then you know, like, oh, well, he's going to be fine. So it kind of takes that out of it as well. But while I don't think it's a perfect movie like Raiders, and I think it does have some issues, I really like Temple of Doom, although for years, even growing up, it was known as the one that's not as good. Yeah. And I think it might just because the dark nature of the movie and the actual content or the stuff that happens in the film, not the overall quality of the film itself. Mm-hmm. But give me some of your thoughts on Temple of Doom, and I have one more thing to say about it before we go on, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I do like the darker approach, although I can say, like, growing up as a child, it scared the shit out of me. Yeah. And, growing up, I absolutely loved Short Round. I thought he was absolutely hilarious, but that kind of ties into, like, the mild racism because he was very stereotypical and, like, it didn't really age well. Yeah. But still, for what it was looking at the time, I thought it was still enjoyable for the most part. But again, like, thinking about it in today's day, like, it's not something that aged well, and not just his character, but like a lot of other aspects as well. But definitely my favorite part of that movie is whenever Short Round, like, helps Indy snap back to it and holds him over, because I've always loved, like, heroic moments like that, especially with the score kicking in. Like, that's why I love, like, a lot of the James Bond moments, because something will happen and then that theme will kick in. Like, and I absolutely love the Indiana Jones theme, the bum ba da bum. It's great. Like, John Williams, fantastic. Yeah. But it's just, like, it's super dark subject material. Like, there's sacrifices, like you said, ripping people's hearts out, and then an annoying actress who just screams the whole time she's on screen, which is very annoying after the first scream. But it's just, like, slave labor. Like, it's just, it's a completely different approach, and it's yeah. And there's some great underlying stuff too that I have in my notes and I almost forgot about. But I have in all caps, Dark as Hell, which I thought was funny. Yeah. But there's also even some World War II commentary, because especially in the 80s, commentary against American action in World War II wasn't very popular. But you get some of Short Round's backstory, and you find out that his parents were killed in Hiroshima. So Indy took him under his wing. And, like, that was almost, like, unheard of in the 80s. It was a movie, especially a big pop culture movie, saying, like, yeah, we killed his parents, so I feel like I have to help him. Yeah. Which was interesting. And also, the villain's, one of his motives, the main villain's motives for, doing these ancient practices and, the voodoo and all that stuff is because British colonialism in India at the time. And he says, like, these British come in, they just think they can run everything. I'm not going to let it happen. And it was just like, oh, wow. Like, stuff that, as your kid, just goes over your head. And, I didn't mention it for the Raiders, but, like, I love that Indiana Jones hates snakes. Yeah. And in every single movie, there's at least one scene where something happens with a snake and he, like, freaks out. I hate snakes.
Yeah. And last thing about Temple of Doom before we move on. I've noticed something about Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, and doing research about it. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was the original Star Wars The Last Jedi. And what I mean by that is Raiders comes out, Force Awakens. Yep. Most people love it. Yay, little complaints. Great. Then they do the next one. And suddenly, especially with Last Jedi, but Indiana Jones at the time, if you look at the complaints, that doesn't even feel like an Indiana Jones movie. That was so different. What the hell was that? Blah, 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 blah. All that kind of stuff. So in the third movie, They bring back characters from Raiders. They make it a similar story to Raiders. There's literally sequences taken from Raiders, and they kind of course-corrected the third movie into kind of bringing it back to making it more like Raiders because of audience response to the film.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the difference is Steven Spielberg made that choice, and George Lucas made that choice for Indiana Jones, where Disney made that choice for The Last Jedi to Rise of Skywalker. And I think Last Crusade is better than Temple of Doom. I don't like Rise of Skywalker over Last Jedi personally. But so obviously there's some differences there, but that's kind of subjective.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole idea of having a second installment come out, fans complain about it a lot and are very vocal about that. So they kind of because originally they were going to make it like James Bond. It was going to be a different random adventure each time.
Yeah.
And the original idea for Indiana Jones 3 was like a haunted house type of thing, like a haunted castle type of thing that they reworked and changed. But with that being said, I love Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, the third movie, which we're going to get into right now.
Yeah.
But I just...
That's an interesting,
cinematic history tends to repeat itself.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just an interesting thing to point out, is that with the thing with The Last Jedi, it wasn't things like that have happened before.
Mm-hmm.
And like Temple of Doom, I think over the years, people are going to look back at Last Jedi and appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I still think that movie has problems. This is not a Star Wars conversation, but I just saw the parallel between those two things and thought that it was interesting.
Yeah, that is very fascinating to look at that and see how cinema history repeats itself, because that's a famous saying, history tends to repeat itself. And
exactly.
This is a prime example.
Exactly.
But like you said, The Last Crusade is up next.
Yes. Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. I'll let you go first on this one.
Okay. I will say one of my absolute favorite things about this movie is the Sean Connery, Harrison Ford dynamic, the father-son dynamic. Because Harrison Ford is just... he feels like he is rejected by his dad, right? Like he just doesn't...
Yeah. They don't click.
Yeah, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely love that dynamic grows as the movie goes on. Mm-hmm. Up to the end where... Because he always calls him Junior.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's not my name.
Yeah.
It's not my name. And then at the end, he just kind of like accepts it because like they have this whole character arc between their relationship. And I absolutely love that. It's probably my favorite thing about that movie.
Yeah. And you find out that his name is Henry Jones Jr. for the first time. You got Indiana after the dog. Such a good moment.
Yeah.
But I thought some of the beginning of Last Crusade, other than the opening flashback, which I thought was great.
With River Phoenix. Yeah.
God, who did such a good job.
Yeah,
God,
rest in peace.
He was taken way too soon. But,
yeah, absolutely.
But I thought some of the opening after that initial sequence was kind of stale. But then the moment Sean Connery shows up, like Raiders, it's just pure cinematic magic all the way through. This might be Sean Connery's best performance. And he's James Bond, and I love him as James Bond. But like Sean Connery, amazing in this movie. He gets giddy over like the Holy Grail stuff. And they went from Judaism to Hinduism to Christianity. So it's like another religion tie-in. And, the movie does a good job of presenting its facts and presenting its exposition. Like, I forgot to mention in Raiders, it has one of my favorite expositional scenes ever where someone's poisoned Indiana Jones's candy. And they're talking about where to find the Ark, and he's about to eat it and then stops to speak. So while you're getting exposition, you're also like, God, don't eat that. And it's a great scene. But Last Crusade also makes it fascinating because they have, at the heart of that story is the dynamic between Indiana Jones and his father. Mm-hmm. And while a lot of similarity between Last Crusade and Raiders of the Lost Ark, while it is similar in tone and similar in what's going on, the thing that makes it wholly different in a completely different dynamic working way is, like I said, the relationship between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford, and their chemistry is excellent.
Oh, yeah.
And it has the greatest transition shot in human history when he puts on the hat as a kid and dips down, and then when it comes back up, it's Harrison Ford. I love that. And this one does take place after Raiders. I believe it was 38 it takes in, and Raiders takes place in 36.
Yeah.
But yeah, love this movie. I love the girl in this movie, and then she turns out to be a Nazi, but I thought her performance was good. And I love the bit with Sean Connery. It's like she talks in her sleep. And Indiana just like, I love the bit where they're tied back to back and like the house starts to burn, so they're trying to like,
and they're like arguing and fighting about like petty stuff too
as
well.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I will say this is the funniest Indiana Jones movie. The humor works.
I'd say
Raiders has some good jokes, but like this is the most consistently funny, but it also moves forward with its action like continually. Like it doesn't sacrifice one for the other.
Yeah.
Because this has some great sequences in it as well. There's a great tank scene where it's like coming up against a wall, and Indy's holding on to it. Yeah, it's such a great scene.
It gives me anxiety every time I watch it, even though I know the outcome of it.
Yeah.
But like, it's just like, oh my God, like you got like, cause his bag is strapped to the turret part, and he just can't get off of it. And it's done so well.
Yeah, it's great. And I love that it finally addresses him being a professor, and like, because he goes into his office hours and there's all these kids like, Professor Jones, blah, 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 and he's like, one at a time, and he like goes into his office. Because
usually we're just with him for his adventures.
Yeah, and then he goes into his office and just sneaks out the window. Like, it's just fun little shit like that. It has two of my favorite movie jokes ever.
Okay.
And one of them is the joke about Marcus Brody, who returns from Raiders, where they're like, we're going to find Marcus Brody. And then Harrison Ford does like this passionate speech. The camera's moving in on him. And he's like, Marcus Brody's one of the most intelligent men I've ever known. He can easily disappear. He knows 6 languages, can do this and do that. You'll never find him. With any luck, he's found the Holy Grail already. Then it cuts to Marcus Brody in Egypt. And he's like, does anybody here speak English? And it's so damn funny. Such a great moment. Mm-hmm. And also there's a scene where they're in a plane. Sean Connery and Indiana Jones. Sean Connery, Harrison Ford. Christ.
Yeah.
And Sean Connery is shooting at enemy planes, and then he completely shoots their own plane and like takes off the back of it. And then he pauses and just goes, son, I'm sorry. They got us. Just like plays it off like they got hit.
Yeah.
It's such a great scene. And the chase sequences are so thrilling. Mm-hmm. The no ticket joke is also great. When Harrison Ford puts on the disguise as like the ticket guy in the Zeppelin and throws the Nazi out the window, and everyone looks by and he just goes, no ticket. And then everyone like pulls out their stuff. Like, so funny. You get great scenes with Sean Connery and Harrison Ford, like when Harrison Ford's like, you never talked to me as a kid. And then so Sean Connery's like, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
He goes, well, I don't know what to talk about now. And then Sean Connery's like, well, what are you complaining about then?
Yeah.
And I think the emotional crux of the movie, and I love this film's third act when Indy has to go and complete the challenges to get the Holy Grail, because Sean Connery gets shot, and so not only are there there's real stakes to like, I have to get this or else my father's gonna die. So it's more personal rather than just adventurous. And I love the scene when the Grail crosses the seal, so the temple starts to collapse. And Indiana Jones is hanging off the cliff. His dad's got his arm, and he's like reaching for the Grail, like I can get it. And for the first time in the movie, his dad goes, Indiana, and just calls him the name he's always wanted to be called. And then he just like looks up and knows like, okay, I need to let it go. Like that's such a great moment in that movie. And it's the emotional crux. And do you have any negatives or in particular about the film?
Negatives? No, I don't think it's like a perfect movie by any means. But I couldn't point like a negative out. But one thing that I absolutely love that ties into the relationship and the emotional of the relationship between them is whenever the tank like goes off the cliff and they think that Indy was on it, which he was able to hold on to the cliff, but they're all like looking over and they're like crying and like upset that like Indy's dead. And then he like gets up and he's like 10 feet away so they don't see him, and he like comes over their shoulder and like looks over to see what they're looking at. And it's just, I love that moment.
And Sean Connery hugs him and says, I thought I lost you, boy.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
So good.
So good.
The only negative I have, other than like I thought part of it was stale, and it tries very hard to forget Temple of Doom, but
well, in what ways?
It's just they don't even reference Raiders of the Lost Ark a couple times, and they don't even mention anything about.
Do you
Temple
think that's
of Doom.
Also taking it in a different direction, that they wanted to like stray away from Temple of Doom and like any connection to that?
I think so.
Like on a filmmaking standpoint, not necessarily like in the movie.
I think so, maybe, but it was just kind of like you expect something and nothing. And also, I love that they kind of hit it on the head of like they want Indiana Jones to be like James Bond, so they cast James Bond as his dad. Like that's not a negative. That's just cool. But my last negative is I hate the cliche of don't trust anyone, and the person who said don't trust anyone is the bad guy.
Yeah. And
like as a kid, I'm sure I didn't see it coming, but like I've seen so many movies now. When I rewatched it, I like as soon as the guy said like don't trust anybody, I was like, fuck, that's right. He's the bad guy. And I hate that cliche. But little, it's nothing major to dislike about the film. But and then at the end of the movie, you find out his real name. You find out he got his name from his dog. Him and his dad are happy, and then they ride into the sunset. And they never made another Indiana Jones movie again.
Until 2008's Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I also have notes.
Probably a lot of negatives, I'd imagine. Well, let me go ahead first, because my talk will be short before you get into your negatives and rip it apart.
Go ahead.
I will say this movie is absolute trash. Now, I do remember watching this as a child and enjoying it because it's fun as hell for kids. But like anyone who's our age, or at least has any concept of like film, they're not gonna like this movie. It's trash. There's aliens in it because fucking what else is gonna happen?
They're interdimensional beings, Ryan. They're not aliens.
Whatever, same thing. God, Nazis are back being the villain again because
it's not. It's Soviets. They even drive by a college like protest that says I'd rather be dead than red.
That's what it is. Yeah. God, how could I forget? I try to block that movie out of my memory. But I will say my favorite part about this film is definitely when they're in the warehouse and he's like running and whipping the lights.
The opening is awesome.
Absolutely.
The opening's awesome.
It's fantastic. But aside from that, there's really no positive. Shia LaBeouf's character I absolutely despise. I think he's just super annoying. But yes, Harrison Ford does. Huh?
Mutt Williams.
Yeah. God, it's so bad. It's awful. And Harrison Ford, you can tell, clearly doesn't want to be a part of this movie at all.
One of my notes is Grumpy Harrison.
And like Harrison Ford is one of the funniest actors to watch because you can tell when he cares and you can tell when he absolutely doesn't.
He cared more about Call of the Wild.
He absolutely did, and I don't blame him at all.
Oh God. But anyway, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
But no, you're good. That's probably the only positive I have about this film is the opening sequence because I think that's rad as hell and that is Indiana Jones. But the rest of it, like the CG is horrible. The chase sequence at the end with the giant killer ants, it's so bad. It's so bad, and it feels like it's trying to be formulaic, and I think that's its biggest downfall. It's not trying to be its own movie, and with aliens or interdimensional beings, like it's stupid. I try to forget that it even exists, but it does, and they're gonna make a fifth one, so this one is in that universe.
Yeah. I'll believe the fifth one when I see it.
Yeah,
but I'll do my positives first. I really like the opening scene as well.
Wow.
Very cool. The entrance of Indiana Jones as a character, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Cate Blanchett plays the villain, and she tries very hard. She's giving like a stereotypical Russian performance, but she's killing it at doing that.
Yeah.
I like Cate Blanchett a lot. They tried to add more to the story by firing Indiana Jones as a professor, even though they undo that decision at the end of the movie, so it doesn't matter. And Marion was back. Marion Ravenwood returns, breaking the tradition of having it be a new girl. Finally, Indiana Jones isn't James Bond. I love Indiana Jones. I like him more than James Bond, but
whoa!
But try not to be James Bond. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I'm glad that they broke that tradition. And then let's go to my negative, shall we?
Oh boy.
Grumpy Harrison has been brought up. Now, there are a couple moments where he's Indiana Jones.
Especially during that opening.
Yes. And like the snake part, he becomes Indiana Jones again. And there's a couple scenes where he is. But for the most part, he's just...
Yeah.
Nuketown.
Oh my God.
Did you remember that?
Yeah, that is the scene I try to forget.
When TV does something bad, it's called jumping the shark. With this movie, whenever a movie does something dumb, it's called nuking the fridge. Because that's exactly what happened. He got into a fridge and survived the nuke. That's more suspension of disbelief than Temple of Doom falling out of the plane.
Yeah.
They do a really bad job at the suspension of disbelief in this movie, which they do a great job of it in the previous films. It feels like a movie without a soul.
Yeah.
Like Indiana Jones, every movie, even Temple of Doom, which is different, you feel that soul and that passion in that movie. The movie just feels very stale, very bland, very CG heavy, and it just takes the magic right out of an Indiana Jones film.
Yeah.
And having the sort of MacGuffin be sort of extraterrestrial in a way, it takes away from the grounded magic of the story. It just feels dead inside. It felt like a movie with a hollow shell. It didn't even feel like a Steven Spielberg movie, you know? Movie makes me sad every time I watch it.
It honestly feels like just movie executives who are like, you know what people love? Indiana Jones. And you know what people love even more? Revisiting a franchise years later. Let's go ahead and make a movie to make money.
Yeah.
And that's what their sole intention is what it feels like, is to make money.
Yeah, and also, remember the Tomb Ninjas?
Yeah.
That came out of nowhere, then disappeared for the rest of the movie.
Yeah. Fascinating idea.
Yeah.
But,
and like the whole thing with Indiana Jones and his son did not work.
No.
And the reason
and they try to play. It feels like they try to play it like the Sean Connery one.
But the thing is, the heart and emotional crux of Last Crusade was him and his father.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even find out it's his son till halfway through the movie, and then you don't have time to have like the bickering thing with that. You know, it just felt very stale and weird. Felt shoehorned. And when you look at the original idea that he wasn't supposed to be his son, it's supposed to be a random character, which the movie works much better if that's the case. Mm-hmm. Indiana Jones got married at the end. Good for him. I mean, I don't see that as necessarily a con, but I'm so glad that, because like they do this thing where the fedora blows into the wedding chapel and Shia LaBeouf picks it up and he goes to put it on as if being like, here's the next chapter of Indiana Jones, and Harrison Ford just takes it and puts it on, and it's like they covered themselves there, because I don't know if you know this, but in the press junkets for this movie, Shia LaBeouf just shit on it. Like while,
did he really?
Like while it was coming out, he was just like, yeah, this movie isn't very good.
Wow.
And before the movie came out, the producer of the film said, one of them might have been Frank Marshall, said, if we do a fifth Indiana Jones film, Shia LaBeouf will not be a part of it. It was just like, damn. Yeah. So you got to give him for the balls, but
at least that's one confirmation we have about Indy 5.
Yeah, right. And the Soviet psychological warfare that they try was very out of place and weird. The movie is very just
all over the place.
Yeah, it's too much, and the script isn't as tight. Like it felt like they were trying, because like in the other movies, they know the thing they're looking for, but it's written in that they have a piece they have to find before finding the thing.
Yeah.
Well, in this movie, they're like, oh, let's find the thing. It's not here, but here's a clue. Let's find the thing. It's not here, but here's a clue. And it's like, no, damn it. It's so annoying.
Even if they were to do that, they would have to have some sort of like feeling like, oh, here's another clue, but here's a very important piece of the movie that you need to know. Yeah. Oh, here's another clue, but here's also something else that's really cool about a character that you don't know yet, but like... Yeah. If they did something rewarding like that.
Whereas, like, for Last Crusade, for example, it happens in Raiders and Temple, too, but for Last Crusade, there's a sequence where they have part of a stone tablet that, like... So, big goal, find the Holy Grail. Little goal, find the rest of this tablet, because we can't find the Grail without this tablet.
Yeah.
So when they go to find the tablet, they find the Knight's Shield that has the inscription. So it's like, oh, they found the thing they were searching for. They didn't go and find a piece of paper that says, haha, it's not here, but you'll find it over here. And then they go and waste like, more time.
This Knight's Shield has this logo.
Yeah, but like it's... Yeah. They naturally do it better, because they have an overall goal and a little goal, rather than just being tugged around the whole movie, like this one. Not a very good movie.
No,
it's really heartbreaking, because the original 3 is one of the best trilogies of all time, but then they made the 4th one. Although I'm looking forward to see what James Mangold does with number 5.
If he stays attached.
If it happens. Harrison Ford's also 80, so I'm really like, what is this movie gonna be? You know, I'm really curious about it.
We'll see. But one thing I did want to touch back on is, like, I'm a firm believer in that practical effects look much better and pulls you into the movie better than CG. CG is necessary when it's needed. Yeah. But like, for example, whenever Shia LaBeouf is swinging on the ropes, it pulls me right out of the movie.
Or when he's like standing in between the two cars and like the weeds are
hitting him. Like it just takes me out of the movie. Now, if they were actually to do that and like have a stunt double, but like put Shia LaBeouf's face on him, then I'd be like, oh my god, like that feels real.
Or even use CG just to enhance scenes, because like, even like they didn't have CG at the time, but the original trilogy has special effects, but they used it to just like enhance something, and it's for a second, it's quick, it's not, you know, then the most of it's practical. That was part of the magic of those movies.
Exactly. And then going back to Last Crusade, like with the whole tank thing, that's a real rock and a real turret that he's on, and he could get crushed, which obviously he's not going to. But it's just the fact that it is real.
There's a stunt where he's on a horse and jumps from the horse to the tank.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they were going 20 miles an hour, but still.
It's the fact of the matter that they practically did it, which brings you into the movie better than this CGI mess.
Yeah. So what are you gonna rate each movie in this franchise?
Oh god. So I would want to say Raiders of the Lost Ark, 5 stars out of 5. Fantastic movie. Don't really have any negatives that I could think of, and probably will never have a negative about it. So, do you want me to rank them from worst to best?
No, just in order.
Okay.
And then rank them at the end.
Okay. So Temple of Doom, I'd have to say 3.5 stars. I think it's enjoyable. It's scary. It's dark as hell. I'm glad that they took the different approach to it. Last Crusade, probably 3.5 stars as well. And Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, probably 1 star. And that's just me being generous because I know
1 star.
Yeah, it's horrible. I don't like it. And then from worst to best, obviously Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is down here. Then we have Temple of Doom. In front of that is
Last Crusade.
Last Crusade. Thank you. And then obviously Raiders being the best.
Yeah.
What about you?
My ranking is the same as yours, like
Okay.
the worst to best ranking. But Raiders of the Lost Ark gets an A+.
Okay.
Obviously.
Naturally.
Love it. To me, it's my second favorite Spielberg movie. So.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Like Jaws and then Raiders.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Temple of Doom gets an A-. It would have gotten a higher grade if Kate Capshaw wasn't in it. Like, that's how annoying she is. Last Crusade gets an A. And Kingdom of the Crystal Skull gets a C-.
Wow. Very generous with that grade.
Just because the opening scene, I legit felt like I was watching Indiana Jones. And then it just
For 5 minutes,
slowly gets worse. And then there are some, like, here and there moments, like,
Yeah.
But then overall, it's not good. It's pretty bad. Pretty bad. But I rank them last, Kingdom, then Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, Raiders. But it's like, this is the bottom. This is not the top. Kingdom, Temple, Last Crusade, Raiders.
Yeah.
So
there's a giant gap.
But yeah. Oh, there was actually one thing that Hannah wanted to add about Indiana Jones, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hannah! There was that one thing you wanted to say about Indiana Jones?
Hi. I'd just like to say that Harrison Ford is hot as hell in every movie, and I'm obsessed with him. Thank you so much.
No arguments.
Yeah.
That is a very, very, very beautiful man.
Especially Temple of Doom. Good stuff.
He
Good
sure
stuff.
listened a lot of it.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I just figured that would be a good perspective to throw in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that'll pretty much do it for today's show. That's
Yeah.
it for Franchise Spotlight, at least, anyway. Ryan, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you guys are interested in doing this, if not, we'll find ways around it. But obviously, if you guys want to give us suggestions for movies, classic movies you want us to
Or
watch that meet those
franchises,
requirements,
yeah.
or franchises you want us to watch, or just any movie or hot takes, or you want to see our opinions
Yeah.
on anything,
Yeah.
please, please, please leave comments on YouTube. That way we can see that. Or if you see our posts on Facebook, go ahead and comment any opinion that you may want us to tackle. And we'll go ahead and tackle that. Like any suggestion at all, we'll absolutely take a look at. But if not, we'll find movies, we'll find opinions, and present them the way we have been doing.
And where can they find us online, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. So on YouTube/C/Movie Nights, on Facebook, Movie Knights, and Twitter and Instagram, movie_nights.
Nights_movie.
Nights_. Right, it's backwards.
You confused them.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. But yeah, that's going to really wrap up today's episode of the podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you'd rather watch them in clip formats, just stay tuned throughout the week. We will post them in segments. The classic movie reviews and franchise spotlights will be clipped out, but the hot takes and the movie news stay as part of the original show. Gotta keep something.
Yeah, exactly.
And but again, thank you guys so much for watching. Please follow us on all of our social medias, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.